Hey, everybody, to start off this week's episode, I just want to mention my book, Scarred. There are 6 scam books up on Amazon now. We sold out the first print very quickly in less than a month, and that got the attention of scam artists who have put up 6 scam books. So if you go to Amazon, make sure you get the right book. You can go to Barnes and Noble. They only have my book up by there. There's no scam artists up there. So just make sure you get the right book. And with that being said, let's go meet our guest, Selena. Selena, my dear, welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, this is awesome. You're all the way out in sunny Arizona.
Yes, I'm in southern Arizona. So right now we are starting to feel a 5-degree dip, which means it's about 100, 105. We take those little things for granted.
Yeah, a 5 degree dip is welcome, huh?
Very
All,
welcome.
all summer long, over 100.
Oh yeah, it's been about 110 to 116, I would say. Tucson, where I'm located at, is about 10-degree difference, so we get it a slightly bit cooler, but not by much.
Wow. And then people always say, yeah, but it's a dry heat.
Ugh. Okay,
115 is 115.
I would swap the 90-degree, 90% humidity over my 110 dry heat any day.
So you've got a story. Man, you had a really chaotic, let's say, first half of your life. A lot of trauma that you put yourself through too, which
Yeah,
many of
absolutely.
yeah, which many of us do. Like we have stuff happen to us early on, and then the decisions we make after that are not the best decisions for ourselves and add more trauma to us, which I did, and the audience will hear what you did also.
Yeah, lots of blame shifting.
Your story is great because of where you're at now and what you're doing now. And I always tell people there's seasons to life, and you'll have cold, dark winters where nothing is going right, and you're just contemplating the end. And then you have bright spring will bloom again, and you're planting seeds for success. And then you go into the summer where you're harvesting that success, and it sounds like you're like in starting to harvest now, and it's going to be a wonderful turnaround for the audience to hear where you're at now.
Yes, I hope so.
Why don't you start us off at the beginning, like where you grew up, and just go into like what your childhood was like.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in a little suburb outside of Phoenix. We technically call it Phoenix because if you're not from Phoenix, it's considered Phoenix, but it's a little suburb called Mesa, Arizona. I was born and raised there. My parents moved from California, I would say maybe a year or two prior to my birth. I am an only child. I was going through a lot of volatile fights with my family at that time. They were not happy, but they were trying to stay together for the kid, as many people do. There was drug dealing involved, alcoholism, neglect. Um, I was still able at that time, though I was getting in trouble here and there, I was still able to maintain and put all my focus into my academics, a lot of focus into music, and yeah, just, really had the educational system as my outlet and as my mentors at that time. I would say when my parents finally decided to divorce when I was approximately 8 or 9 years old, that is kind of where the catalyst of all of my trauma began.
Even though there was drug use and alcoholism when your parents were together, that wasn't the most traumatic time.
No, and I think it's because I didn't remember it. I had a lot of cousins at that time. I still do, obviously. I don't see them as much anymore, but we would all hang out together. My uncle was a cop at the time. So it just, in a child's brain, it didn't seem like anything more than just the usual family gatherings or a family member leaving for the night and not coming back. Just seems like regular life for me. I didn't know anything different.
And what was Mesa, like as a community? Was it a tough town to grow up in? Was it a nice community? Was it downtrodden, homelessness on the streets? What was Mesa like?
I can give you two words for Mesa, Mormons and meth. There always was a seminary across
Wait a
every
second.
school.
Wait a second. Mormons and meth?
Yes, ask
Yeah.
anybody. Ask anyone from Mesa, they will let you know.
Oh, that's
Especially if you
fantastic.
were a little too far east into Apache Junction, it was the equivalent of methamphetamine central. Lots of mom and pop shops. I saw a methamphetamine lab blow up when I was 15. And then if you go a little bit more to the left side of Mesa, every single school was implemented to have a seminary, and anybody that identified as Mormon, one of their electoral classes had to be seminary.
Wow. Mormons and meth.
Mormons and meth.
I love that. I don't know why. It's just uh all right. So that's the community. So
That's
your
the
parents,
community.
yeah, so your parents divorce at 8,
Correct.
and that's where your trauma really kicks in, you say. So take
Yes.
us into what happened then.
So at that time, my mother was awarded custody of me. My father had every other weekend. My mother had moved out here following my father from California in aspirations that they were going to end up and stay together for the family. She did not have any family out here in Arizona of her own. She only knew my father's family, and she was working on getting her teaching degree. So she was doing what's called subpadre, and she was also doing different summer school activities in order to supplement that income while she was not doing the normal fall to summer classes. So I would go over to my nana's house at that time, my dad's mom, and I would get dropped off there every day really early, and then I would get picked up when she was done. There's a lot of neglect and drug use going on within that environment as well. My nana did not speak very much English. It was all Spanish. So she liked to watch her soaps and then go to sleep. I had an aunt who had a methamphetamine lab in the back area that was kind of sealed off. I didn't understand why it was sealed off with clear tarp, but I was just told not to go out back that way, to go around a different way. People were coming in and out, but I don't remember too much of that. What I do remember was having an immediate family member come in one day. They were completely inebriated. I happened to be the only person at that time that was within the household. Everyone else was either gone or sleeping. And I can vividly recall them chasing me through the house, trying to grab my breasts and push me into a room. Unfortunately, with trauma amnesia, you don't remember everything. And even though I have been doing EMDR for many years to unearth some of those traumatic events and put them to rest, this is one of those ones that my brain still will not unlock. I just know something bad happened. I ran. I escaped. I went to a local elementary school and I stayed there for 6 hours, huddled in a corner on a slab in the summer. My mom came and picked me up and she took me back to my nana's the next day,
Like nothing had happened.
like nothing had happened.
And did you tell her
Yeah,
what had happened?
yeah.
Like
I think I told her to the best of my ability, but I also think as a child, I kept it. I protected that family member because I wanted to go back to my nana's house, and I knew I didn't have other places to go, and I knew that my mother was strapped at that point, and there were so many other variables, external variables, that keeps a child from not wanting to confess or not being able to comprehend how to confess. And I think I was in the mix of both. Do I make my mom stay home, who is a raging alcoholic and has anger issues, or do I come back to this environment where I at least know how to run? Choices an 8-year-old has to make.
yeah, yeah, which an 8-year-old isn't supposed to make, but Many of us are forced to.
Exactly.
At 9 years old, you started a a habit, which
Yes. Which is it makes sense retrospectively, but at that time it certainly does not. So my parents at that time, they had acquired what was called a black box, and that was a legal pay-per-view through a tiny little converter that you connected to the back of your cable box. They were very popular. They acted as if nobody else had them. They were the only ones to have them. It was worth so much money. Come to find out, the whole neighborhood has them.
yeah, everybody back in the day had them.
Everybody had them. Yes, my mom still has a closet full of VHSs that she recorded off a pay-per-view that she refuses to give away because she worked so hard at recording all of those movies. It's absurd. Regardless, I discovered pornography that way. I discovered it late one night. We had access to the Playboy pay-per-view channel, some other pay-per-view channel. I think there was three total. And I had started to discover that this felt good and that these women were lusted over and fawned over. And I just something in my brain was like, I want to end up being like one of these women. And so I would watch it very ritualistically every night as soon as my mom would go to sleep. Watch it for about 2 hours, do what I needed to do, and then I would go to bed. My mother caught me several occasions. Several occasions, she would take the remote away. She would tell me to stop watching, but she never got rid of the converter box. She never got me any sort of therapy. She never asked, why was I watching this at 9 years old on a nightly basis? What happened to me to make me want to do that? And so there was again, a lot of neglect. I think a lot of just focusing on self at that time. She was grieving her own marriage, that the problems I had seemed moot, and that I would just eventually get over them.
All right, so you have this abuse happen at your nana's. You start watching porn on almost a nightly basis at within a year later. And how do your grades and sports go? Do they suffer? Are you able to still concentrate on them?
I'm actually a straight A student up and through high school. I focused on music. I played the viola. I was first chair all throughout high school. I got straight A's in almost every single class. I struggled just a little bit with math, but everything else I got straight A's in. I did track. I was actually a really good girl up until about 15 years old, I would say.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Because
surprisingly.
usually the grades suffer, you lose interest in sports or activities, you isolate.
I found that all of the activities and education, even to this day, is what helps my brain focus and recenter in a way that is positive for what I later found out was bipolar. The manic phases that I would go through and these cyclic phases that I would go through, I found that education, learning, reading especially was my escapism. I read so many. I think I read 100 books one summer in order to beat an individual from like Battle of the Books because I wanted to escape so badly the environment that I was in. And I think that that kind of speaks volumes as to how I was able to have that escapism and at the same time still be a good girl.
Do you know, have you looked into it or has a therapist mentioned, does early trauma bring on bipolar?
Yes,
It does.
yes.
It seems like it would. I never heard somebody correlate until right now, you mentioning that.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. That and childbirth.
childbirth brings on bipolar too?
Yeah,
Oh, wow. Because it's so
interesting,
traumatic.
huh? Yeah, both.
Wow. That I'd never heard.
Yep.
You said you were everything. You were a good girl up until 15, 16. Do you start partying? What about your virginity? What happens in the 15, 16 range?
Yes, that is definitely when I started to lose interest in having straight A's. I wanted to focus more on being a social butterfly. I was more and more interested in men and sex and, porn and drugs. And I went and purchased my own sack of weed from someone for the first time. No one smoked me out for the first time, if you will. I went to an individual and said, "Hey, do you have weed? I want to try it." I didn't even know how to smoke it. I grabbed some of my dad's old cigars and just kind of loosely wrapped it around a bud. And yeah, I just had such a desire. And me and my mother at that point, we were fighting really viciously at that time. She was starting to call me a whore. She was starting to call me a slut. She was starting to accuse me of doing drugs such as methamphetamine, which at that point I had never touched. I was just smoking weed. So things were getting really bad at my mother's house. I was starting to experiment with drugs at school. I was starting to mix classes. I was always doing my assignments. I just didn't want to sit in class. And so it came to the point where I finally ended up at my father's house when I turned 16.
Can you take us into, have you like looked back on it or analyzed it? Like what all of a sudden at 16, like flipped the switch in you and said, I want to start partying? Do you know? Or was it just a chaotic environment with your mother being drunk all the time?
I think the environment with my mom had gotten so bad that I had almost expressed physical assault on her several times. I had ran away. I ran 4 miles to a local cousin's house to get away from her. Um, I think it had been building up over time, but I was starting to learn to fight back, and my mother didn't like that.
Is there any love expressed in these years? Like, if your mother is drunk all the time, I would assume it would be tough for her to be a loving, doting mother. What about your nana? What about your father? Is anybody telling young Selena that they love her and that she's doing a great job?
I think my family's family did. I think my dad wanted to. He just was focused on himself for those first 8 to 10 years. With the marriage, moving to Arizona, eventually finding his wife, whom it was a beautiful soul. He was focusing on him. I think my mom couldn't get over the fact that I was so much like my mother or like my father. I was a scapegoat throughout that. But I had my grandparents, I had certain family members that would approach me and say, "We see what you see, and we understand what you're going through, and we hope you make it." There was even an anonymous CPS call that was made, and they came, and my mom wore her nicest dress. I had no idea who this individual was. She told me to wear my nicest garments, and she did things that day that we have never done in our entire lives. And I didn't understand that it was CPS until 2 years ago. She told me, "Remember that lady that came to our house to observe us a couple times? That was CPS."
Huh.
Yeah,
So you looked like the Beaver Cleaver family for a few hours.
for a few hours. Yeah.
Um, did you graduate high school?
I graduated with a high school diploma and I lettered in orchestra.
Okay, cool. And did you go to college?
I did go to college. I ended up going to community college initially. I did not get into my first college of choice. It bummed me out. It caused me to shift blame. And, it's this school's fault that I didn't get in. It's not my talent that didn't get me in. But I felt such shame for having worked since fourth grade. So I don't know how many, 8, 9, 10 years of just hard dedication to get into the school, and I didn't get in. So I started going to community college. I was doing pretty well at first, but then I noticed a very cyclic behavior. I was getting A's one semester, doing very well, participating in extracurriculars like journalism. And then the next semester, I would get heavily addicted to drugs. Stimulants and alcohol were my drugs of choice. And I would have a bunch of W's on my transcript. Then following semester, I would dry out, do really well, get a bunch of straight A's again, be very gung ho about my academics and graduating. And then the next semester, it would be a bunch of W's again. And so at this point, I was getting tired. And it's because I didn't understand.
Was this your bipolar?
Yes, this was my bipolar, but I didn't know at that time that it was bipolar. I just thought that I was young and restless. And so at this time, I'm still consuming porn pretty regularly, probably heavily, I would say. And I had a desire to enter into that industry. So it was very easy for me because the industry, there was people that were on MySpace during my time that I was able to reach out to and ask, hey, how do I get into the industry? How am I able to shoot for you? What do I have to do? Do I have what it takes? And I had in company write me back pretty quickly and tell me about the highest and best agents that were located in Los Angeles. And I had one of them accept me, fly me to Florida bright and early at the age of 22 to go shoot with some of the highest, some of the biggest name organizations that are out there.
Do you remember the mindset of making that leap into porn? Like, was this like during one of your bipolar manic sessions, or just what got you to that mental point to say enough of this college and I'm going to go do this?
It started long before age 15, but I remember at age 15 on my backpack, I had porn star scribbled very largely on there. I remember the F Star logo also had the porn star logo that was being sold everywhere. That was very popular. The girls that were popular in my generation were the likes of Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, girls that were celebrated for their drug use, for showing their snatch on camera, for bad behavior. And I think I just wanted to emulate all of that to be that beautiful, rich, coked out party girl that is lusted over and is famous. And I think, like everybody says, or at least people from my generation, I'm going to be the next Jenna Jameson. And so that's what I set out to do.
So you're off to Florida, you immediately start shooting,
Yes.
and the first shoot, is it weird? Are you inebriated at all to calm yourself down? Are you anxiety ridden, or you just dive right in and say, I'm doing this?
I was certainly nervous, and that's an understatement. It was with a lot of different extras. It was for Bang Bros. I remember it completely. I even remember the name that they labeled it. It was a party scene. It was meant to be a reality scene. And a bunch of girls were sitting there talking, oh, well, who's the star? Who's the one having sex? And I was like, I think that's me. And they're like, you're the star of the show. And so I just felt so buttered up and gassed up. And just one of the producers afterwards said that if I met him in the hot tub, there was an opportunity for another scene. Now, I didn't go meet him in that hot tub, but two of the other extras did. And I also witnessed several extras perform sex acts they did not get paid for.
And what about drug use right early on? Is are they doing drugs right before filming, or you're not seeing that?
Most of them keep that to themselves, unless it's marijuana. If it's marijuana, they don't care about that. If you're drinking, most makeup artists will let you drink while you're in the seat with them. But if you try to drink in front of a producer that is of high quality, they will tell you to put it away. Especially with any sort of hard drug like methamphetamine, coke, or heroin. If they see that, they'll kick you off the set and they'll charge you for the day's worth. Those are the types of drugs that you generally have to hide.
So this is like 20 years ago, roughly, let's say.
2008.
How about testing back then for venereal diseases, sexually transmitted diseases? Are they doing that?
Yes, so it depended on the type of the caliber of girl that you were, if you will. Most of the standard working girls, it was once a month. If you had a little bit more pull, if you had a bigger name, you were able to get up to 72 hours beforehand. And if you were the biggest name and you had a contract, like a contract star through Wicked, you could do as close as 24 hours before a scene. I never made it to that caliber. Mine was always once a month, unless asked by the male performer to have one taken sooner.
So you do have the right to ask somebody you're going to perform with, like, when did you last test?
Yes, we have to see their tests. Uh-huh. So we always it's part of the protocol to swap tests with each other. At least back then, it was part of protocol to swap tests so that we could both look at them. And because herpes is so common, not everybody in the industry has that. So it is up to the performer to choose whether or not they want to work with an individual that may have simplex 1 or simplex 2, just cold sores, but they don't want to contract that.
Early on, was it a an agent who told you um, your body type was not perfect for porn, but it would suit some other job really well?
Yes, so I am approximately 5'10". At that time, I weighed, I would say, 140 pounds or so. So for a tall girl, that's still pretty slim. But he had said at that time, I needed to tone up for about 6 months. I needed to lose a little bit more weight, but I would do really well in this escorting field. That's probably where I would make the most of my money. And he would help me get into that field if I was interested in doing so.
So just like that, we go from porn shoot to now escorting.
Correct.
They seem to go hand in hand.
They always do.
Yeah. And now is it work the same way, like as if he was setting up a porn shoot, he's setting up the dates and then taking a percentage?
Yes. That's it. That's exactly what they do. Yes.
I mean, well, you've been out of it for a while, but back then were a lot of the porn players escorting?
Yes, I remember when I went to the AVNs that year for 2009. I can still find pictures of me walking the AVN red carpet, and I got to meet a lot of really big names, and some of them happened to be on the roster of my agency at that time. And I remember conversing with them, and they were very kind, very willing to talk to me and, kind of answer my questions. And one of the girls, whose name I will not mention, I expressed to her that, I had just gotten back from New York. They had set up a shop in New York. All they wanted was escorting. The guy was actually very threatening. And I warned her about that. And she said, "Oh, I don't care about the escorting part. I make loads of money that way." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was just thought maybe you might want to be warned that that's all you're going to do out there. You're not going to shoot anything. But I didn't understand the industry enough myself then.
So this was a common occurrence is to escort.
Very common.
You moved on to I don't know, would you call it another agency to set up escorting that had like mob ties?
Yes. So I ended up Finding this agency, I was looking around, I was getting sick of the States. I was in a probably a bipolar phase at that time. I found an agency that had the word modeling in it, for the protection of the case and the individual who is in prison. I'm not going to mention a lot of details of the story, but I did end up getting affiliated with an individual who did have organized crime ties. And one second, I think that I am going on the trip of my life. And another second, I am being trafficked overseas and I am being forced to work 24/7. I was flown to a different city to meet with two other girls, one of which was kind of like his girl at that time. So she was watching us, I guess you could say. She left at night, and this other girl starts confiding in me that she had been stuck in her room for 3 weeks and she had been flown out from another country. She hadn't had one job and she had been stuck inside this room. She wasn't allowed to leave. So something within my soul told me to tell her to pack her bags. We're getting inside a taxi. We're flying to the capital. We're going. I'm taking you with me. You're not going to stay here and suffer anymore. And so we went to the capital. We had to turn off our phones and get new phones. And I started getting bizarre messages through my Skype saying that I will see you in the States. And me being a little snarky, I said, bring it.
Oh boy.
They did.
Does the story go on where you go back to the States?
So I do end up back in the States. I didn't have the money to fly back to America at that time. I was told to go to a brothel and make my money back that way. So I had to stay in the country and work at a brothel, which was a very different experience in and of itself that I won't really go into. Um, I finally got back to the States and I went with an organization. I was broken. I was broken. I had backpackers depression. I ended up falling in love with that country. I fell in love with several people in that country. I didn't know what to do with myself because all I knew myself as was a sex worker.
I think it's, just important for people to hear how quickly, you can fall off a cliff. You went from a straight A student, lettering, in music and a potential for success in whatever field to I think having watching porn from 9 years old on, people don't think it affects you. You're a perfect example that it does.
It
And,
does.
yeah, and then you get into porn, they switch you into escorting, which then turns into trafficking, and now you're like a broken individual, just like that in what, maybe a 2 year span.
Yeah. So I'm broken. I'm vulnerable. I'm heavily addicted to alcohol. I'm starting to get addicted to methamphetamines at this point because I can't afford cocaine, of course. Um, I reach out to this agency I had never heard of before, and I was pretty at that point I had been working in the industry, I would say about 6 years or so. So I was pretty in the know about the agencies, escort agencies, porn agencies that were legit, that were full of shit, that were scammers. And this one agency that I had never heard of before reached out and wanted me to come out to their state to go work. So I said, sure, I needed the money. So I go to that state and they tell me that there's someone that's coming. We don't know when. They're being a little flaky right now, but they're coming. And I'm like, okay,
This is for a date. They're coming for a date.
yep, they're coming for a date. And at that point, I had already realized that the people that I was working for were not very good people. Just based on a multitude of details. I don't necessarily need to go into, but fear is a major factor in what I observed with people that worked with these people. So, I was getting ready and I had my own system when it came to my dates. And I was in the bathroom doing my makeup, probably taking a shot, and the chain was on the door. And the person started to open the door, and I said, "Hold on 1 second, let me grab the chain." I grabbed the chain, and I'll never forget. He had on a hat with sweat all over it. He had on a plain, dirty navy blue tee, a bandana around his mouth right here to cover, with a barrel straight in my face. And he told me to get inside. And after that, he proceeded to rape me in multiple orifices. He asked for significant belongings of mine, of which I told him no. He asked me again. And I said, "These are my belongings. They're not yours. Like, you did what you needed to do to me. You can leave now." And he was like, "I want this particular belonging." And I said, "If you want it so bad, you're going to let me have it so you can come back and get me." And I didn't hear from him for about a year, or someone else like him.
Do you think the agency set you up with this guy, or do you think they didn't know like exactly what his intention was either?
I had gotten rid of that agency because I knew that they were bad people. So I went to a different agency for only 3 days at that point, and it was because I was very fearful of the other agency, and I knew that just by their mannerisms, what they were saying, things that they were doing, I had a lot of fear in me. And so I don't know if the other agencies set me up or not. I don't think I ever will. All I know is that his DNA ended up being a match about a year later, and I did get a letter in the mail saying that he was arrested.
And where does Selena go from here?
Selena goes back to LA
All right.
because that's all she knows. She knows LA, drugs, sex. That's it. And at that time, I was 27 and I had the 27 club in my head. Pretty strong at that point.
Indicating for people who don't know, so about so many people dies have famous people died at 27. So you're like not even caring at this point,
Yes.
life or death, whatever.
Didn't matter anymore at that point. I was too broken. I was too vulnerable. I did not really care to go on with my life. Um, I started using an abundance of drugs and alcohol at that point. I was very vulnerable. I did not have a lot of money to my name. And I met this magical guy. And this magical guy just wanted to solve all my problems and give me all these drugs and find this place for me to live and have sex with me whenever I wanted and just everything that Selena wanted at that time. And so after about 2 weeks or so, it wasn't very long until he said, "I have a place for you that you can move into. You can get out of this house with all of these people." Because I had 6 roommates at the San Fernando Valley at the time and found out that was kind of common. And so he took me to this place and I met a male, heavily tatted, and a robust woman who also was tatted. And they said they couldn't wait to meet me and they were so excited to have me there. And I didn't understand necessarily. And it's funny because more and more of it has kind of come back. And I remember they had me go into this room with no windows, with wires sticking out. I mean, crudely, not even being hidden, just sticking out with like a paper mache flower in the middle of a hole in the wall with wires sticking out of it. And for whatever reason, I was being fed drugs and sex. I wasn't being fed food. I think my brain had developed such a strong mechanism, defense mechanism, and I knew what was going on, but my brain couldn't fathom the fact that it was really going on. They took my passport, they took my ID, they would burn me with cigarettes. I remember one of the only times that I would be able to leave, they would take me to a gas station and make me sit in a parking lot for 20 to 30 minutes. And then they would tell me, okay, it's okay to go back now. But why? I would ask. And they would never answer why. But I would find different things moved around in my room. There was just a mattress, the bag I came in with thousands of dollars of heels and dresses that I never got to see the light of day of again. And I truly believe that is because I made all of that with dirty money. So God took it away because of the way that it had been made. So I didn't know how long it had been, but things were starting to get bad. Um, Certain weapons used in crimes that I honestly don't know anything about were starting to get stashed in my room. Um, I was starting to get this sense that something bad was about to happen. They were starting to clear out that house. Just, I remember they're supposed to take me to rehab and they drove me an hour and a half to a lake. And I had just heard about someone being murdered at that lake through them. And I said, I need to pee right now. And they said, no, you need to wait till you get to the lake. And I said, I'm going to piss all over the back of your car if you do not pull over and get me into that McDonald's. So they did. And they waited for me. And you always go into public places. I never left that McDonald's. Of course, I went back because I had Stockholm syndrome and I was in love with the man that was giving me drugs and having sex with me. And I didn't understand that that wasn't love. I was so vulnerable and I had such a Berlin Wall of a defense mechanism going on that someone as nice and sweet and smart as me could let something as fucking crazy as this happen to me.
And how long were you at this house and then finally get away from it?
3 months.
3 months in there.
And I finally escaped.
And you were told that this was payback for helping that girl in the other country escape.
Yes. Yes, I owed them money for her because she was worth a price tag.
So when you were getting those Skype messages, we'll see you back in the States, they
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 did.
they found you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
They weren't lying.
So Mr. Charming, knight in shining armor, was part of the payback crew,
Part of he was what was called a babysitter.
a babysitter.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's what they call them when
So
they're
there,
meant to babysit their prey.
in 2000, what was it, 13? You like dabbled in recovery.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So I escaped around 2013. I went back home. I started to get into going into meetings. I wasn't necessarily doing inpatient yet. I started doing inpatient in 2014. I went to 10 different facilities. I was in maybe 4 psych wards, 4 28-day programs, and maybe 3 or 4 halfway houses within a 3-year span. I was desperately, desperately trying to get sober, and I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't have the right resources. I didn't have the right follow-up services. I didn't want the right follow-up services. I thought that I could do things on my own. If I just do a little heroin here and there, then that's okay. Or if I'm only drinking on the weekends, that's fine. And none of that worked for me. I, I, I tried and beat my head over the brain trying to have my cake and eat it too, and at the same time can be California sober. And it just did not work for me, unfortunately. And it took God, as I understood him, and going to a faith-based program to be able to understand many months later that no, I cannot pick up that bottle. No, I have to be careful what pills I'm taking, regardless of the pain I'm in. No, I can't go out with you and do coke and drink or, whatever other drugs are out there right now. Um, it does not work for my body. It is as if I'm allergic. I will break out with unhinged behavior and immoralities. And so I do not want to be that individual again. And I don't ever want to go back to that place that I was before.
So when did you finally, so you started trying to get clean and sober in 2013. When did you actually have your last drink or last drug?
April 4th, 2016, and it was around a campfire with my best friend. Last time I had my sip of alcohol. Although I did, this is a funny story. I was pregnant and my friend had brought me a bunch of popsicles, nausea popsicles, but there were some vodka ones in there. And she said, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I got rid of all these popsicles. Here's the nausea ones." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." First popsicle I took, vodka popsicle. I started crying so hysterically that that I had relapsed and that I had lost my sobriety date. And I had to contact everybody in my sobriety circle. And they're like, no, you didn't mean to. You didn't mean to relapse. That wasn't an on purpose ingestion of a substance. And so that's the only other time. And that was an accident.
You'll be coming up on 10 years clean and sober.
I can't believe it. If you would have told me 12 years ago in the depths of my despair, or when I was in the room with no windows and wires, that I would be sober 10 years, here today talking to you, like, I'd be like, just shoot me again. Like, there's absolutely no way this could happen.
And you became a person of faith and going to church.
Yes, yes, I really started to delve into my faith. Actually, half of the books that I have on my work table that I won't show you are faith-based recovery books. And I was blessed enough to meet my husband at church too.
So you went from sex work, sex trafficking, meth addiction, alcohol addiction to meeting what would become your future husband in church.
Yes,
How amazing
I
is
did.
that? And with a past like yours, how soon do you tell a person you're getting involved with that you have feelings for about your past?
I made him wait 10 dates
10 dates, and then you opened up to him
and then I opened up to him.
and you told him everything.
Yes.
And how do you approach that? Do you say, "All right, look, we're starting to get a little serious. I think before it goes any
Well,
further, you should know all about me."
so when it came to kind of starting to share about each other and we were on our second date, I think, I told him, listen, my past is really loaded. I'm not really comfortable talking about it right now. There are parts that I need to edify, and there are parts that I just don't know if I can trust you with yet. And I need some time, you know. What if I'm a guy? Like I need some time. I need some time. Why don't you give us another give us 10 dates? And by that point, you know, if we're still dating and we still feel that this may be something, I'll talk to you about it. And so in his head the entire time, he thought my big secret was that I was a guy.
Yeah. And even that didn't scare him away.
No, it didn't.
So when you told him what it was, he's probably like, "Whew,
He
okay."
was relieved. Yes.
Ah, that's fantastic. He accepted that you had a checkered past and he didn't run.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And I found out he had his own checkered past as well, which was great because we were really able to understand each other on a multitude of things from, you know, having our own assaults at young ages to having our own addictions to drugs and having our own, we had very similar, we grew up similarly in that aspect. And both of our parents will admit that. And I think that that's what drew each other to one another.
And that probably stopped him from being judgy, having that waggy finger. I hate people like that. Would they wag that finger at you because they're so high and mighty.
Oh yeah, that egotistical balloon. Like I always just want to pretend my head's a balloon and start blowing it up.
Yeah. We still have more of you coming full circle in your story. So one, you get clean and sober. Two, you get faith. You start going to church and meet a guy who will eventually become your husband. And three, career wise, what happens for you?
I go back to school and I graduate with honors from University of Arizona. Go Wildcats. And I am accepted into University of Southern California's Masters of Social Work program. I was initially doing CNA work, hospital work, case management, and this position came into my inbox for a program assistant for a long-term restorative residential care for women who have been sex trafficked. And I got the job and I was promoted within 3 months to program director. So I am now the program director of Hope Rising Arizona, and we are a faith-based long-term restorative care program that focuses on equine therapy.
So you go from being drug addicted, porn star, escorting, sex trafficked, to becoming a program director at a facility that helps people addicted who have been sex trafficked.
Correct. Yes.
Bingo, bingo. There's the full circle right there. I love it. Wow. And lay that smile on you. You got to be like, you got to
I
even be
can't.
like saying to God, like, really? This is like unbelievable. Like,
It is. Even to hear you say it, it just like it doesn't always feel real that someone from that past and someone that I mean, I worry about how I'm going to tell my son someday because I worry about porn and how early consumerism happens with people. And I'm worried about being able to get a job because this lovely little website called Porn WikiLeaks came out while I was in the industry and it gave everyone's real name, it gave their address, it gave their parents' names, the ones that he was particularly nasty with. He gave out what STDs that they tested positive for. All of this information readily available on the internet. If you look, all you have to do is look.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, it was terrifying when it came out. But all of this information is so readily available on the internet, and all you have to do is just type in my last name and look up my maiden name, and it's all right there. And it's like, what type of job? What is ever going to take me seriously? Like, even if I have the education to the moon and back, or I have the experience of X, Y, and Z, how is my lived in experience as a junkie prostitute ever going to be fruitful in this world? And God showed me how.
Did that come up at all when you got the initial job and then when you got the director job? Did did they
Yes,
your past came up
yes.
and how was it received? How was it brought up?
I used it as a positive. I said, hey, I want this program to be survivor led. I am your survivor. Let's talk.
You really, and I state this over and over, you really take your healing to the next level when you find a way to give back to others. And
Always.
yeah, and you're doing that, and it's fantastic. And I think it should just give hope to maybe the parents of a child who's lost right now, or to that lost child who watches this, that all right, I'm in a really dark spot, but this girl was in a really dark spot, addicted to meth and alcohol and trafficked and sex work, and now she's program director helping people who have been in that same position. It's just fantastic. Like, you couldn't write this script any better.
No.
No, it's
I actually had a
insanity,
cop tell me that. A cop told me that my story, when I initially contacted the sheriff for over this, they told me that my story sounded like it came from a movie script and that it wasn't real. And I was just kind of like, little do you know,
Yeah, it's fantastic. So it should give hope to everybody.
everything is possible.
If you had any last words for people in the audience, or just looking back on your life, what's your last thoughts before we end this?
There's always a reset. Everything is possible through faith and God as you understand him, not as they portray him to you. Come to faith on your own terms. Don't make someone else do it. And even if you have the ugliest past in the world, that doesn't define you. That's not your label. Look at me. I'm not that sex worker junkie anymore. I'm educated and I work hard for it. And you can do it too.
Awesome. Thank you, Selena.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic story. All right, everybody, there you have it. Selena took a mess and made a message out of it, and you can too. Don't lose hope. Peace.